Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session on mastering the art of chairing meetings. In the world of business, meetings are more than just gatherings. They are platforms for decision-making, innovation, and building relationships. The role of a chairperson is not simply to lead a meeting, but to create an environment where ideas flourish, decisions are reached, and every participant feels heard and valued. By the end of this session, you will have practical strategies to encourage active participation, manage discussions effectively, and guide your meetings towards productive outcomes. Let's begin. The chairperson's core responsibilities. Now that we've set the stage for today's topic, let's begin by looking at the core responsibilities of a chairperson. Your role goes far beyond simply starting and ending the meeting. You must foster active participation and welcome diverse viewpoints. Every meeting is richer when different perspectives are heard. This means encouraging contributions from everyone, not just the most outspoken voices. Also, you need to guide discussions towards problem solving. Meetings can quickly become sidetracked, so part of your skill as a chairperson is to bring the conversation back to the key issues and lead the group towards finding workable solutions. In addition, you must steer the meeting towards issue resolution. By the end of the meeting, participants should leave with clear agreements, assigned actions, and a shared understanding of the next steps. With these responsibilities in mind, let's now explore how to overcome one of the most common barriers to participation: dealing with silence in the room. Address the source of silence. Meetings thrive on a diversity of thoughts. Yet, it's common for some participants to withhold their ideas, perhaps because they're unsure of the topic, lack confidence, or simply don't feel their opinions will be valued. If these voices remain unheard, the meeting risks becoming one-dimensional, and those individuals may disengage entirely. This is where your role as chairperson becomes crucial. You must actively ask questions to invite input. Use open-ended questions to draw out quieter participants and signal that their contributions are both welcome and important. By doing so, you turn silence into an opportunity, what we call agreement triggers, that prompt valuable discussion and broaden the perspectives in the room. Encourage collaboration. Once you've addressed the silence and ensured all voices have a chance to be heard, the next step is to build an environment where people genuinely want to participate. And that's where collaboration comes in. A collaborative atmosphere doesn't just happen, it's something you must consciously create. Start by setting a tone that encourages contribution from everyone. Make it clear from the outset that all ideas are welcome and that the purpose of the meeting is to work together towards solutions. Then establish an appropriate meeting cadence. That means pacing the discussion so there's enough time for reflection without losing momentum. Patience is essential here, especially if you're encouraging quieter participants to speak. You can also use quick exercises to help participants connect with one another and build empathy. For example, at the start of a project meeting, pair people up for a 2-minute exchange where each shares one challenge they're currently working through. This helps humanize the conversation and strengthens trust. When people feel relaxed, valued, and connected, they are far more likely to contribute openly, making your meeting both richer in ideas and stronger in outcomes. Let people volunteer to speak up. Once you've created a collaborative environment, the next step is to manage participation in a way that builds confidence and trust. People are more likely to share ideas when they feel they are doing so by choice, not by pressure. That's why it's important to let participants volunteer to speak before calling on anyone directly. This approach helps them feel in control of their contribution, which naturally increases confidence and psychological safety. Avoid forcing individuals to speak, as this can make them feel uncomfortable and may even discourage future participation. Instead, allow volunteers to take the lead in speaking. However, if no one comes forward after a reasonable pause, you can gently invite input in a structured way, for example, by going around the table or following a sequence. This ensures that every person eventually has the chance to contribute without creating a high-pressure atmosphere. Ensure equal participation in meetings. After allowing people the freedom to volunteer their input, it's equally important to make sure that participation is balanced across the group. Design and conduct your meetings so that everyone has a fair opportunity to contribute. One effective method is conversational turn-taking, giving each participant their moment to speak before moving on. A useful tip is to invite quieter participants to speak first, while asking more senior members to share their thoughts last. This prevents the discussion from being dominated early on and helps ensure fresh perspectives are heard. You can also rotate roles and the speaking order from one meeting to the next. This keeps the process fair and encourages engagement from all members, not just the same few voices. By applying these techniques, you make it clear that every voice counts, thereby reinforcing trust and inclusivity in the meeting culture. Show that you care. Balancing participation is only part of the picture. To truly engage people, you need to show them that their contributions matter. Research tells us that 2/3 of people believe their opinions do not count at work. That's a sobering statistic, and as chairperson, you have the power to change that perception. Start by making it clear that every idea is valued, regardless of whether it's ultimately adopted. A simple acknowledgement can go a long way. For example, after someone shares a suggestion, respond with a genuine, "Thank you," or "That's a useful point. Let's explore that further." These small gestures create a culture where people feel heard and respected, which in turn encourages more open and honest participation in future meetings. Facilitate conversation through questions. Once participants feel their voices matter, the next step is to keep those voices active, and one of the most powerful ways to do that is by asking the right questions. Questions are the engine of dialogue. They don't just collect information, they encourage people to think more deeply, explore new perspectives, and collaborate on solutions. It's important to spread your questions throughout the meeting, not just save them for the end. Asking along the way keeps energy levels high and helps the conversation evolve naturally. Use your questions strategically to challenge the team in a constructive way. For example, rather than asking, "Does everyone agree?" which usually results in silence, try, "What challenges might we face if we go ahead with this plan?" This not only invites responses, but pushes the group towards practical problem solving. Facilitate conversation through questions. Now that we understand the value of asking questions, let's look at how to frame them so they truly inspire participation. Start each discussion with a clear, open question that invites people to contribute. This sets the tone that the meeting is a collaborative space. One effective approach is using the "how might we" format. This kind of question frames challenges as opportunities. For example, instead of saying, "We have a customer service problem," you could ask, "How might we improve our response time to customers?" which encourages problem solving. Then, design the session so the group can focus on answering that question. Remove unnecessary distractions and keep the conversation aligned with the main topic. Finally, use questions to inspire reflection and feedback. A practical method is the 5 whys technique, where you repeatedly ask why to uncover the root cause of an issue. For instance, if a project is delayed, asking why several times can reveal whether it's due to resources, processes, or communication gaps. Facilitate conversation through questions. To make your meetings truly engaging, the quality of your questions matters just as much as the timing. Here are some examples that can spark more exciting and thoughtful discussion, including, "Can you tell me more?" A simple prompt that invites deeper detail. "Why do you think that's happening?" Encourages analysis and insight. "What am I missing?" Shows openness and invites alternative perspectives. If you had the freedom to change anything, what would you change? Inspires creativity and innovation. How does the team feel? How does the team want to feel? Brings emotional and cultural factors into the conversation. And what's moving us backward? Why? Helps identify obstacles and their root causes. Remember that the goal is to prompt open dialogue not to dominate the conversation or prove a point. Your role as chairperson is to create space where ideas can surface, evolve, and be refined collectively. Offer help to participants. We've seen how the right questions can spark meaningful dialogue. But to make those conversations truly productive, you also need to be ready to offer help. As chairperson, invite participants to articulate their specific needs. This might be support with resources, clarity on a process, or assistance in resolving a challenge. By creating space for people to share these needs openly, you signal that the meeting is a problem-solving forum, not just a reporting session. Once needs are expressed, treat each participant according to their expressed preferences. For example, some may prefer a quick verbal update in the meeting, while others may value a detailed follow-up email. Adapting your approach to suit individual styles shows respect and builds trust. Offer help to participants. Offering help to participants is one way to build trust. Another, perhaps less obvious technique is to harness the power of silence. Silence can sometimes feel uncomfortable, but in the right context, it can also inspire creativity, encourage reflection, and sharpen focus. As chairperson, you don't need to fill every gap in the conversation with words. Sometimes, letting the pause linger gives participants the space they need to form deeper thoughts. Rather than pushing people to speak before they're ready, you can leverage silence to create concentrated engagement. In fact, some meetings benefit from incorporating silent segment, especially at the start. For example, begin by having participants quietly review a document or proposal, making their notes and questions in silence. This approach ensures that when the discussion begins, contributions are more considered, and everyone starts from the same level of understanding, problem solving and resolution of issues. Once you've mastered participation techniques and used tools like silence to focus discussion, the next stage is to move the meeting towards problem solving and resolution. As chairperson, your role is to guide the group through a clear, structured process so that problems are addressed methodically rather than haphazardly. There are 4 key steps in this process, including identifying the issues, understanding everyone's interests, listing the possible solutions, and evaluating the options, and selecting the best one. By following these steps, you create a transparent decision-making process that builds trust and ensures solutions are agreed upon collaboratively. In the following slides, we'll look at each step in detail, starting with how to identify the issues clearly and effectively. Problem solving and resolution of issues. Let's begin with the first step in our problem-solving process, identifying the issues. This starts with defining the core problem clearly. If the problem is vague or poorly understood, the meeting will struggle to find effective solutions. Be specific. For example, instead of saying, "Our sales numbers are low," you might clarify, "Sales have decreased by 12% in the past quarter, primarily in our mid-market segment." Once the problem is clearly stated, gather relevant data and perspectives. This ensures you are addressing the real cause, not just the symptoms. Data might come from performance metrics, customer feedback, or operational reports, while perspectives can be drawn from different departments or stakeholders. By taking time to define the problem accurately and collect the right information, you lay a solid foundation for the rest of the resolution process. Problem solving and resolution of issues. Once the issue has been clearly defined, the next step is to understand the interests of everyone involved. Interests are the underlying needs that must be satisfied by any solution. They go beyond what people say they want and reveal why they want it. For example, 2 departments might disagree on a budget allocation. On the surface, it's about money, but the real interest might be about securing resources to meet deadlines or maintaining team capacity. The best solution is the one that satisfies these interests, not just the surface positions. This is why it's essential to use active listening skills, paying close attention to both what is said and what is implied. Clarifying questions such as, "Can you tell me why that's important to your team?" can help uncover these needs. By ensuring that the chosen solution satisfies the key interests of all parties, you increase the chances of buy-in and long-term success. Problem solving and resolution of issues. With the interests of all parties clearly understood, the next step is to generate potential solutions. Begin by conducting a brainstorming session without critique. At this stage, quantity matters more than quality. Encourage participants to share any idea that comes to mind, no matter how unconventional it may seem. The goal is to create a broad pool of options to work from. As ideas are shared, list them all down where everyone can see them, on a whiteboard, shared document, or digital collaboration tool. This visual record helps participants feel their contributions are valued and ensures no suggestion is overlooked. Remember that evaluation comes later. For now, focus on creativity, inclusivity, and momentum in idea generation, problem solving and resolution of issues. With a list of possible solutions in front of you, it's time to move into the final step, evaluation and selection. Start by assessing each option's strengths and weaknesses. Consider factors such as cost, time, resources, potential risks, and the likelihood of achieving the desired outcome. You may also look at the impact on team morale, customer satisfaction, or long-term strategy. Once this assessment is complete, select the best option, the one that most effectively addresses the problem while meeting the key interests of all stakeholders. This decision should be clear, justified, and agreed upon by the group. Where consensus isn't possible, ensure the reasoning behind the chosen solution is communicated transparently so everyone understands the decision. In conclusion, mastering the art of chairing meetings requires a balance of structure and flexibility, leadership and empathy. You must create an environment where all participants feel valued, guide discussions towards clear outcomes, and resolve issues with fairness and insight. As you put these techniques into practice, you'll not only run more effective meetings, but you'll also strengthen relationships, inspire collaboration, and achieve better business results. Thank you for joining today's session. I hope you find these insights useful in your professional journey.